How does the Mafia solve its problems? Right, with bullet holes and explosions, sometimes even caught on surveillance cameras.
My name is Knox,
And today I'll show you the most brutal attacks by the Mafia from different countries. From pinpoint elimination of bosses, like the head of Gambino family, to mundane disputes that ended in mass shootings and killings. Shootout in Moscow City. And such things can happen anywhere, not only in shady and dark neighborhoods, but also in elite centers. For example, on November 17, 2017, the Moscow City complex became the arena for a massive shootout among Russian mobsters. It all started at the Oko Tower restaurant, where businessman and crime boss Dmitry Pavlov, known as Pavlik, was celebrating his 55th birthday. The conflict arose over a dispute about parking a Mercedes Maybach, which Magomed Ismailov and Gavril Yushvayev arrived in, also guys with a dark past. The car was left at the VIP entrance, which displeased Pavlik's security service. Ismailov and Yushvayev went up to the restaurant, and after some time, Ismailov went down to the car because someone was kicking it. A conversation about improperly parked car escalated into a verbal altercation, soon joined by other security guards and 5 Caucasians from Ismailov's side.
An attempt to resolve the conflict privately was unsuccessful, and soon a full-fledged shootout began, just like in Mafia movies.
According to case documents, all participants in the incident were armed with pistols. Ismailov tried to take cover between elevators and witnessed his injured guys falling in the lobby. When the shooting stopped, Ismailov made his way outside. However, upon returning, he found that the shootout had moved into the restaurant. Among the casualties were both security guards and innocent bystanders. One of Pavlov's guards,
Platon Koida, was wounded and died 4 days after the incident.
What conclusion can be drawn? Park properly, or else someone might come at you with guns. Execution. But don't think that such things only happen in Russia. A surveillance camera on the street in Puerto Rico captured a dramatic moment of a dispute within the Puerto Rican Mafia.
Essentially, a real execution of a rival clan.
The video footage of this incident was posted online, causing widespread public outcry. The recording shows a group of people standing at the entrance to a store when suddenly they are attacked by shooters from a passing car. Some manage to open fire on the gunman, injuring several of them. The car continues moving, continuing to shoot even at peaceful people trying to find shelter. After a short time, the mobsters return to finally eliminate their opponents. They cold-bloodedly
Finish off the people lying on the ground, completing their gruesome reprisal.
The reason for the attack? Simply dividing the area between stores and deciding to get rid of their competitors. And the peaceful people? They had nothing to buy from the competitors. That was the logic of the raiders. Novokuznetsk.
But sometimes the Mafia acts more selectively, but no less boldly.
In Novokuznetsk, a sensational murder of Alexander Zhestokov occurred, known in criminal circles as the leader of the Zapsibovsky gang. This event, captured on video, happened shortly after his release from prison, where he served a sentence for extortion and murder. According to reports, late at night in the Jambul bar, Zhestokov was meeting with friends to celebrate his release. Around 1 a.m., an unknown person approached him with a silenced pistol and fired several shots before fleeing.
The event was captured on camera, and the video made its way onto the internet, causing widespread public outrage.
Zhestokov was convinced in 2017 for organizing a criminal community and participating in it, as well as for extortion and fraud committed in 2007. The organized group Zapsibovsky was known in the Novokuznetsk and southern Kuzbas regions, where they were involved in real estate scams, controlling the drug trade, and forcibly extorting money from local entrepreneurs. All in the best traditions of the Mafia. After the murder accompanied by a video recording, nobody in the bar called the police, and all present quickly left the scene. No one left to be friends with. As the investigation presumed, Zhestokov's reckoning was settled by the guys who took over the area during his time in prison. Thieves in law. What do you say about the murder of the top criminal ranks of the Russian Mafia? Yes, I'm talking about thieves in law, as they are commonly called. Astamur Shamba and Alhas Avizba, known in the criminal world as Astik and Hasik, lived a short but eventful life. Both born in the same year, they were compatriots and walked through life side by side until they received the titles of thieves-in-law in March 2013. Their lives were closely intertwined with the activities of the influential Abkhazian thief Pyza, who became their godfather in the criminal world. For 6 years following their coronation, Astik and Hasik were always at Pyza's side, but they tried not to publicize the tasks they carried out for him. Tragedy struck them on November 22, 2019. Astik was killed on the spot at the San Remo cafe in Sukhumi, while Hasik died an hour after the attack in the hospital, where he was taken along with a wounded waitress. This event became the fatal division of their paths. Astik and Hasik were buried at different times and in different cemeteries in Gudauta, but they were accompanied by the same relatives and friends, including Pyza. The deaths of the two young Abkhazians were related to the struggle for dominance in the criminal world of Abkhazia, particularly between their Gudauta Mafia, led by Pyza, and the Sukhumi one, overseen by bosses like Nanik and Tengulash. This invisible war for influence and power proved fatal for both young men, leaving behind only memories and speculation about the reasons and consequences of their deaths. But most of all, I feel sorry for the waitress who ultimately died because of someone else's disputes. Angelo Bruno. But not only thieves-in-law are killed, but also leaders of the American Mafia. Angelo Bruno was one boss who, despite his reputation, tried to avoid the cruelty and open violence typical of crime. He portrayed himself as quiet tobacco trader, but actually made millions from illegal gambling. However, his reputation couldn't protect him when on March 21, 1980, Bruno was shot with a shotgun while sitting in his car. Bruno lived in the heart of the Italian district of the city, where he felt safe as the Mafia Don. He ruled these streets, though not for long. What's worse, this act was carried out by one of his own men, a counselor and member of the family named Antonio Caponegro. This reckless murder essentially condemned Caponegro to death, as his actions were not coordinated with other Mafia leaders. He acted too boldly and ambitiously, hoping for universal recognition. In the end, he was killed, like all the others who knew about Caponegro's plans.
And I'm not surprised, because nobody likes traitors. And how to deal with someone who has no brakes, all for personal gain.
Falcone. But do you think the Mafia only deals swiftly with its own kind? No, they are also aimed on the contrary, at overly honest people. Let's remember the story of Santino Deo, linked to Giovanni Falcone, a bold and determined Italian prosecutor who actively fought the Mafia. He led the famous Maxi trial in the late 80s and early 90s, which resulted in sentences for 338 defendants and 19 life sentences for various Mafia bosses. This made Judge Falcone a target, and it cost him his life. On May 23, 1992, the Mafia retaliated. They planted almost 2 tons of explosives under a bridge and detonated as Falcone was driving over it. Naturally, there were other cars there. The explosion killed Falcone along with several others, including a child. But does the Mafia pay attention to such trivialities? Santino Deo was involved in this assassination and later became an informant, revealing all the details of the murder. "Giovanni Falcone died in my arms," he said. Surprisingly, the perpetrators were never arrested, although the police pretended to be active for a while. At the funeral. But believe me, there are even more brutal Mafia executions. Let me tell you now. A tragic incident involving the shooting of at least 17 people at a funeral occurred in the Mexican city of San Jose de Gracia, located in the state of Michoacán, known for its brutal Mafia feuds. The event sparked widespread public outcry after the video was published on social media. The footage shows unknown assailants shooting at people lined up along the wall with their hands behind their heads. However, arriving law enforcement officers found no bodies or traces of blood at the scene. Only 2 cars, spent shells, and a bag of cleaning supplies were found, leading the police to believe that the scene had been thoroughly cleaned. The country's president called on the population to be patient while awaiting the results of the investigation and expressed hope that the events depicted in the video do not correspond to reality. The prosecutor's office actively investigated the incident, but in the end, silence. After the media noise subsided, official figures no longer even mentioned this gruesome incident. Violence in the region, especially against the backdrop of actions by drug cartels, has increased significantly in recent years. And believe me, this is not the first time bloody executions have taken place at funerals, underscoring the ongoing struggle for power between criminal groups in Mexico and their intertwining with the authorities. St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And since I'm talking about the most gruesome attacks, I can't help but mention the most famous one. On Valentine's Day in 1929, Chicago witnessed a bloody Mafia massacre known as the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. In a garage on the north side of the city, the bodies of 7 people were found, all members of a gang competing with Al Capone's gang. One of the survivors was Frank Gusenberg, who, despite 20 bullet wounds, stubbornly refused to reveal the names of his attackers to the police according to the Mafia code, claiming nobody shot us. The police noticed the wall where the victims had been shot, extracting bullets from it for ballistic analysis. These bricks, pierced by bullets, are now on display at the Mafia Museum in Las Vegas, as a reminder of that day. The investigation found 70 shell casings at the crime scene, indicating the use of 2 Thompson submachine guns, which was key evidence. The massacre was organized with the involvement of individuals in police uniforms, who arrived at the scene in a Cadillac and made the victims stand against the wall, creating the appearance of a legitimate search and arrest. But the actual shooters were 2 men in civilian clothes. Despite numerous witness testimonies and interrogations, specific perpetrators could not be brought to justice. This case remains one of the most mysterious in the history of the American Mafia, highlighting both the cruelty and cunning of criminal gangs at that time. Although everyone already knows who was behind the crime: the hitman. But let's move on. Recently, surveillance footage emerged capturing the moment a man was executed right in the parking lot in front of a store. The gruesome incident caught on camera happened between 2 members of the same Mafia gang who were once even friends. The video shows 29-year-old David shooting his comrade Leandrea Lopez. David exits from the driver's side of a Ford pickup, pulls out a gun, and points it at the victim's head. I deliberately stopped the video at the moment he fires and the victim falls to the ground, but the shooting continues afterward.
You understand, such beastly cruelty shouldn't be shown.
During the interrogation conducted after David was apprehended while on parole after 10 years of imprisonment, he claimed he was just giving his friend a ride to pick up his SUV after a night spent at a party, and the friend went towards the store parking lot. David simply didn't know that there was a complete recording of what happened, and upon seeing it, he paled and immediately stopped giving false testimony. David has been charged with first-degree murder. As the investigation later revealed, Lopez was entertaining himself with his friend's girlfriend while he was serving his sentence. And then, in one of the quarrels, the girl confessed to David about his friend. The result, you've seen for yourself. Staten Island murder. Here's another vivid example of disputes caught on surveillance camera. One evening, on Staten Island, a quiet and respectable neighborhood in New York, a loud murder occurred. Francesco Calli, a 53-year-old man, known in certain circles as Frankie Boy, was shot right in front of his house. Calli was considered the head of the Gambino family, a real mafia boss, one of the 5 most influential Italian-American mafia clans in New York. According to police reports cited by the New York Post, the attack was particularly brutal. Calli received at least 6 or 7 shots, but the reprisal didn't end there. The shooter, driving a blue pickup truck, ran over Calli's body. This moment became crucial evidence in the murder case. Immediately after the attack, Calli was rushed to Staten Island University Hospital, where doctors soon pronounced him dead. Reports from NBC News emphasized that the police continued to investigate the circumstances of this incident and actively search for the perpetrator, who is still at large. No arrests have been made in connection with this case yet. Cali's murder raised many questions about the current activity and structure of criminal clans in the region. The shooter, dressed in a police uniform and using a vehicle that could be perceived as a police car, indicates high organization and possible connections of the crime with internal disputes in the mafia environment. And yes, this is just another reminder that gangsters haven't disappeared from the streets and conflicts still happen. The police believe that the murder is simply an attempt at another power and financial reshuffle in this notorious criminal family. Conclusion: as you can understand, the methods of problem solving in the criminal world haven't changed one bit, even to this day, regardless of the fact that it has become much easier to end up on camera during one's own reprisal. Well, that's it. If you're interested in such topics and you know how to write scripts, edit videos, or work with voiceovers, then welcome to our team. The link to the Telegram bot will be in the description.